All right, 8:01 on a Tuesday, a record-setting day in Omaha. Let's go for 60. If we stop at 59, 60 is the way to go. And then I've got my baseball fix. So we were talking about basketball at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I watched myself some little Dominican Republic, Republic, Winter League last night. It was fantastic.
They're taking over everywhere.
I wonder if we could ever get an atmosphere like that for just a normal baseball game around here. Like I do have it on the bucket list to go to Japan. I'd love to go to the Tokyo series between the Dodgers and the Cubs this year, but it isn't going to work out because I'm hoping to be in Raleigh.
I was going to say, we can't send you?
But like in Japan, it's just a constant noise.
Well, the Tokyo Dome. The Tokyo Dome is one of the best venues in the world.
But I would like watching that last night. I would love to have that atmosphere for baseball. It'd be like the Millard West, Millard South State Baseball Championship a couple of years ago over at Tal Anderson, where it was just a party. It was loud. People were into it. Well, I wish it would. Like it used to be like that. Now it's changed. But I'm starting to get my baseball fix. Truck Day is coming up. Spring training's about to begin. Brian Christopherson will join us coming up at 9. Brian writes in the discussion about the future of the spring game, especially at a place like Nebraska. He said, great, now all the little kids are going to end up on drugs without the drug-free pledge. That is true.
Damn.
That is true. How many kids were saved because they got to go on the field and hear the football coach give a pledge to say no to drugs, and they remembered that their entire life?
Yeah. You want to take a hit? No.
I
T.O.
was
said
thinking
no.
that.
There comes the meth problem again.
Have you ever watched Ozarks?
Watched?
Ozark?
Yes.
Like we're
Fine family program.
I've seen, that's another show where I haven't seen the whole series, but I've seen enough of it to know what's going on. And I forget the kid's name, but the little kid, they have him try and pledge and say no to drugs. And he was like, well, actually, drugs helped prop up the U.S. economy in 2008. And a lot of people, it was fun. I always think of that when I think of the drug pledge.
Yeah, say yes. Okay.
Like, no, I'll say no to drugs just as long as you're willing to admit that, people make money and it does kind of help people out and people survive off of doing this.
Maybe they could have a separate say no to drugs.
If you just get rule in the middle of the end and everybody
to say what?
Everybody put up your right hand.
They don't even do it anymore.
Yeah.
They don't let the kids on the field. Hell, I went to Oral Roberts and during the under 16 media timeout in the second half, they invite everybody to come down on the field or on the floor and dance.
Oh, that would drive me crazy.
Saw that.
All those shoes on the floor.
Well, and they don't sweep the floor afterwards either.
Oh, that's terrible. Why would you do that? That's bush league.
You couldn't do that at Allen.
I think it's an ORU thing. No.
Well, obviously it's an ORU thing. I haven't seen anyone else do that.
I don't know what in particular why they do it, because it's not like it's a special song or anything. It's just, I don't know. They're doing the cha-cha slide. I can't remember. We're in the middle of a break, and I was like, oh, my God, there are people flying from everywhere to get on the floor for 20 seconds.
Left. Take it back now, y'all.
But with the spring game, which is, I think across college football, the spring game is going to look completely different. And there'll be a lot of places where, like, we're not playing a game. We might have an open practice, spend a little money, and we'll show you a little bit of what we have, but we're not playing a game because we don't have enough bodies. One of the things I really appreciated, like I enjoyed the 1890 open practice right at the beginning of fall camp back in August. I also really liked, so the year after COVID where nobody could go into the stands, that following spring football where you could have larger crowds, Scott did a open practice. And I thought it was great. People got to see, they didn't play a game. They played some 7-on-7, but they did all the stations. They did all the practices. I would take that over a spring game. I would play some 7-on-7. I know I got knocked for it in the past, but I would have like coaches mic'd up so that people could hear them coaching.
Yeah.
I think you'd get more out of that than coming to a spring game. And maybe that's the way that Nebraska goes, is they have 15 practices. They don't end with a game, but they end with an open practice where it costs you $5 to $10 to get in. All of the players go through a regular practice. The coaches are mic'd up.
Mm-hmm.
They explain some things. You give them a little, maybe even a little 11-on-11 scrimmage. Do a couple of stations, but get in, get out. You limit it to an hour and a half, and there you go. You got your fix for the spring. We avoided injuries. We don't have enough players for a game, and people got enough that they're not going to be like, I paid this money, and you gave me a farce of a game. Now, one of the reasons why rule changed is because at the end of Scott's tenure, when Trev was here, it looked much different from when they both played, and Trev didn't like it, and Nebraska fans complained that the money they were paying, $15, $20, $25, $30, whatever, they were getting a farce of a game. And so he was like, hey, we got to do something that resembles more football for a spring game. Well, nowadays it's just not going to look that way. So maybe we'll hear something this week as well. But also keep this in mind. When they start this stadium project, if they don't have to have a spring game in the stadium, they could probably speed up the timeline of work they can do.
I think, and hear me out here. You ready? Here's my pitch. The cut to 105. Okay. So on the Jumbotron, you have Monsters Inc., where you had the Monsters Inc. scareboard leader. Mm-hmm. We put 95 through 115.
Mike Wazowski.
We got the guys who are 95 to 115 or 120. And then basically we have that ranking. And then they go and they do drills and they practice. And then as the practice goes on, based on their performance, they gain points or lose points. And so you will be on the edge of your seat trying to see, oh my God, he just caught a pass. He went from 106 to 104. Oh my God, he's having a bad play. He's falling. He's dipping. He started at 94. Now he's at 102. Oh my God, what's going to happen? You got the 29 DBs. They're all wearing 1 through 29 to show what their ranking is going into the practice. I think that you don't think people would pay to see that. Can you imagine the families of the players out there in Memorial Stadium crutching onto their purses, watching their son battle for the spot on the team, comes down to the last play. This guy catches this ball. He goes from 106 to 105. This is it. And at the end, they go, they kind of Project Runway you. They go, Avita's A, good luck. And they send you off. I think that would sell more than the spring game. I think you get more people in the stadium.
That would be wild.
Get 85,000 people to see who's going to end up on the 105. I don't know,
man. Survivor Island inside of Memorial Stadium.
Basically, make it like a 3-week thing. They all come every Friday. You see the same 25 guys coming to practice, and they got to earn points in order to stay in the 105. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, I didn't see this guy here last week. Has he fallen so badly in practice that he's now a part of this competition?
Be like the Running Man.
It'd be like Redemption Island in Survivor, if you remember that.
We just saw it a year and a half ago. We were talking about playing an actual game in the spring. Yeah, where Nebraska would play North Dakota State. You'd play somebody you're not going to play in the upcoming season. Now we're I don't even know if spring football is going to happen for the public. We're going to practice, but I don't know if you're going to be able to see a game. And especially with the timeline of the calendar, Ohio State, they made a comment on BTN the other day during their celebration. Ohio State starts spring football in 4 weeks.
The quality of life for the coaches that end up making it to the national championship has got to be so low. I mean, to do all that coaching, 16 games, even James Franklin, if his team had won in the semifinals, it would have been 17 games. Mm-hmm. To go through that incredible grind of a season, a grind that no other teams before them have had to gone through. And then at the same time, you're dealing with the transfer portal, you're dealing with high school recruiting, you have your eyes on guys, and then as soon as you're done with the national championship game, win or lose, you have to start re-recruiting your own players to stick with the team while also trying to get other guys maybe to come to your team for the next roster.
Or helping your DC move out of his office because you can't stand him.
Or that. And then you go through all that, and then 4 weeks, we're back to football. You know how crazy that is? I mean, there is no break. Where is the break?
You sign up for it though. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna go. Oh, cry for me, Ryan Day, who was on Jimmy Fallon last night. Talk about a guy that's turned his life around. Ryan Day was being run out of Columbus, and last night he's on Jimmy Fallon. They sign up for that stuff. Yeah, it's not ideal, but they know what they're getting. Okay, so I don't want to hear, oh man, we got to work 20 hours a day. Okay, then don't be a football coach. Be a radio host. We work 20 hours a day.
You might work 20 hours a day. I don't work 20 hours a day.
He's 22.
Chris writes in into the Equitable Bank inbox. Any thoughts on the Penn State DC hire? So Jim Knowles, who was told not to show up at the celebration.
Yeah, that's rough.
Why?
I mean, won national championship. His defense was great.
Yeah, but you know that
there's bad blood.
He was dealing with Penn State. Yeah. So and there, I guess it's widely reported by Ohio State media that Knowles and Day had a rift. going on. My initial thought is now that's how you hire a DC. So Penn State paid $3 million for Jim Knowles. They're all in on 2025. The Penn State NIL has taken a jump because they're into the retention business. They're able to pay a DC $3 million.
They kept everybody too.
The Georgia Tech and Arizona head coach, that's what they make. The DC at Penn State makes that. Just go get the best one available versus Nebraska promoting a not very good secondary coach.
Yeah.
They went and got a secondary coach, and by his salary yesterday, they think highly of him. And yet people wonder why Nebraska can never get better. I contend that it just doesn't really matter to upper most levels of the university. They give just enough lip service to make it sound good, but clearly they're fine with being terrible. If not, go out and pay and get the best players and coaches both thoughts. Money is great at Penn State. $3 million is a lot. I think if I'm Jim Knowles was not going to go to Oklahoma because what are you going to go there for 10 months and Brent Venables gets fired and then you're like, okay,
yeah,
I'm a woebegone, so now I'm on to the next one.
Yeah.
Or are you going to go to a place where you look at their athletes because Abdul Carter should be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft from Penn State. They got dudes. Okay, they're able to recruit dudes. So you're not all of a sudden going from the penthouse with Ohio State to the poverty where you're like, oh man, these guys can't play. You're going to a program that has dudes in it that Penn State has to be, if not one of the favorites to win a national championship. So that's why it's attractive. Nebraska's not attractive to a lot of people. That's the problem. Okay, they may have money. Sometimes they may not be willing to spend because, scared money make no money.
Yeah.
But Nebraska's not attractive to everybody. And that's on Nebraska to change the narrative of this is the place to be. The money is good. The life is good. The football is good. The fans are good.
The talent.
This is the place to be. Until you get to that point, then I don't even put Nebraska in a conversation with Penn State. It also is the comfortability of the head coach. Matt Rhule's not on the hot seat. James Franklin, so to speak, they've turned it up because he's watched Michigan and Ohio State, their chief rivals, win national championships the last 2 years, and all of a sudden your quarterback's coming back. You made it to the semifinals. You're like, this is perfect for us. But the upper levels at UNL know how important football is, and Nebraska needs to start winning. And they're not like, you know what, we're going to handcuff them because we don't want them to take away from the attention of the extension of the library because it's an academic place. Hell no. You're like, we got to win at football. We got to win at football now.
I think another thing you have to consider, too, is that over these last couple of years, Nebraska has given money to coaches, and these coaches have gone in and they haven't had success. And those coaches aren't just going to tell all of their colleagues, well, they weren't successful because I'm bad at my job. They're going to say some things that may not be too endearing about the Nebraska athletic program. And when you have a lot of these guys come in and then leave, and then other coaches hear about it, it doesn't make UNL what it seems to be or what they want to be. And so that's why it's so important that they got to win. You got to start having success because maybe like the Midwest isn't for everybody and living in Lincoln isn't for everybody and so on and so forth. But if you're winning, it's for everybody. Everybody loves to win.
You think if so Penn State's all in.
Yeah, and no more excuses, by the way, for James Franklin. It's you got what you wanted. You got K-Tron back, you got Singleton back, you got Aller back, you got the best DC, arguably the best DC. Well, for sure the best DC in all college football because Al Golden is now in Cincinnati coaching for the Bengals. So you got it, man. This is it. If it ain't now, when is it?
So let's say they don't win a national championship. What happens to James? I mean, he's got their OC-DC combo are pretty good, even though the OC hasn't scored in 21 possessions against the new DC from KU to Penn State.
That'll be a very awkward spring practice.
I mean, if you are a Penn State fan, you love this because you know what?
Sure.
You've watched your two rivals win national championships, and you're like, we are Penn State. They even say it.
Yeah.
We are
Penn State.
You have financial resources now that you haven't had in the past, and so you've gone all in. If I'm a fan, I'm like, heck yeah. But I'm also a fan that's like, this doesn't work out. It'll never work out with James Franklin.
If you don't,
so it's national champ. But they put it when you take a DC from the team that just won the national championship, and you pay him $3 million, it's national championship or bust. So there's also part of Nebraska entering the conversation. I think you'll know if Nebraska's changed the narrative if that game at the end of November is a big deal for both programs, like a big, big deal.
I think for them, it's at this point, make the national championship or bust. I think if they make the Natty and then lose in the Natty, I don't think they would get rid of Franklin. Now, if they were to get to the semifinals and then get blown out in the semifinals by one of the teams that they just can't beat, like a Michigan, like an Ohio State, like an Oregon, then I think, you'd have the conversation of like, all right, maybe it's time to go in a different direction because we've put in as much as we possibly can put into this program and cannot get to the point of being the best, even though we've invested enough to be the best.
Hey, Penn State is driven by Michigan and Ohio State.
Hey,
who is the Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin? Who drives them? Because remember, we spent a while being driven by Wisconsin and Iowa at the top of the West. That still drive Nebraska? Hey, we got to overcome Wisconsin and Iowa, and then once we do that, we can focus on Ohio State. At least you're Penn State. You're like, we got to be where Michigan and Ohio State is. If I'm a fan, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Got to spend money. Here is Scott before the break. Scott, thanks for the phone call.
Gentlemen, thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
So I am first of all going to start by saying I don't go to practice, so I don't go to the spring game. But just give me a quantitative number. How many spring games do I have to sacrifice and never have them again to be relevant at the end of November and beat Iowa consistently? I'm all in, buddy.
Scott, thanks for the phone call.
It's a great call. All of them.
Never again.
I'm telling you, I really do.
Don't put the game on BTN. They steal the secrets.
They thought Bell was going to be a guy that they were going to use and that he was going to make an impact. And him going down and then not being able to come back, I think. And then also, too, Bly Hill was a guy that they really, really liked. They went out of their way, watched tape on him, picked him out of nowhere. All of a sudden, he's starting as the other corner in the spring game, and then he goes down. And yes, he ended up coming back and playing, but it definitely affected, his season. When you have, and like they were all gun-ho their very first season being like, we're playing football.
It was enjoyable.
This
past year's spring game with Dillon and Barney and Bonner. And I mean, it was an enjoyable spring game.
I think that injury is
Thanks for the memes.
Maybe why there is this conversation of, could be a thing that it just ends up not happening.
I think those injuries led to the conversation about grass.
Sure.
Which, ironically, North Carolina is going to grass.
What do you mean, ironically? Of course they are. I mean, that guy, I bet it was in the 300-page expose.
It was 400.
The 400-page book written by Bill Belichick. I guarantee you, page probably 8 was, hey, you're going to put in some bluegrass here.
Isn't it interesting when you have a football coach that has some power and says, this is what we're going to do, and the athletic director and the athletic department says, yes, sir?
Well, I think it was very telling that Rule, also, by the way, first off, Rule loves Belichick, has talked about Belichick, a lot. And the fact they both come from the NFL and they both know the injury history and the studies of grass versus turf. And so it's Matt Rule, we were talking about this. I was talking about this a year ago with people at the press conferences that, he went and he did it at the practice fields. One of the first things he did was, all right, we're not doing turf practice fields anymore. We're installing grass here. I wonder when they're going to do it at Memorial.
Well, it took Trev leaving and Troy Dannon to get here to say, we're going grass.
60-degree day in January. Why not?
It was done. But, So maybe Belichick is all in at North Carolina.
He signed his contract. They showed the signed contract.
Is it still $1 million buyout on June 1?
I don't Saints head coach, Bill Belichick. Who dat?
I think Mike McCarthy today is going to get announced as the Saints coach.
They interviewed Kellen Moore just today.
Maybe I should adopt them. I did love the Dome Patrol.
It was one of the first notifications I got that Kellen Moore is having an interview.
Is he bringing Goddard and Barkley?
No. And Juergens and Mailata and Becton and Thomas and Dickerson and
Randall Cunningham,
Fred Smith Barnett. And Brown and Shipley and Hurts and Pickett.
It's a good roster.
It's a hell of a roster.
That's a good roster.
At defense too.
I mean, if you were
still lose the Super Bowl,
how did Nakobe Dean fall? The dude was one of the best linebackers in the country on one of the on almost dynasty in Georgia, and he fell. And I know why he fell because he was small and whatever. But it didn't matter that he was small.
He fell because if you go to Georgia, you can only play for one NFL team.
Yeah, that's the Eagles. And, man, look what they've done. Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. When they had DeAndre Swift last year, they had him. Kaylee Ringo. So, I mean,
right. They should have
talk about it. Talk about a GM who just has perfectly mastered the art of, no, we're going to take this guy because he's super, super talented and he measures well. And guys like Quinyon Mitchell. And then also at the same time goes,
hey, he's a
baller.
He scares me on Super Bowl Sunday.
He's a baller.
He's been a dude.
And we're going to take a guy like that who played at a smaller school, but we know he's got the measurables. But on the other side, we're going to go and take Cooper DeJean, who everyone thinks is a safety and not an actual corner. But we're going to take him because, man, he was a stud at Iowa.
Brian Christopherson joins us in about 40 minutes. We got plenty to talk about. Nebraska is back. They started winter conditioning.
Yeah.
Mat drills are back.
Now, how long do you think you could last in a mat drill?
I'm not even going to attempt it. I'm out of eligibility.
I think
That's all you, man.
Hey, technically, if the NCAA releases this new rule, I have one more year of eligibility.
Oh, you
to
talk
5
about
and 5?
a bit?
But you're already out.
Oh, I can't go back in?
Could you enroll back in?
No.
Can I enroll back into grad school? I would.
That'd be great for content.
Good luck. My days of schooling is over.
Yeah, mine
That was too much for me.
This is my school now. This is my grad school right here.
I went to school for 20 years. That was way too much.
Too
much, and I don't have like letters in front of my name or after my name. And
Dr. Sharp.
Gary Sharp, PhD.
I mean, you would think you're in school that long. I mean, you start in first grade. You're like, oh, this is going to be a 20-year slog.
Is that what you were thinking?
I remember saying that. Yeah.
Looking
at Susie Joe, talking to Susie. Man, I can't believe we're going to be here for another 20 years.
When my first grade teacher, Sister Monica Mary, was like, telling us things, I was like, oh,